All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. For those that are still coming in, we appreciate you taking some time to listen in. This is our third installment of our Leopard Solutions Honoring Women's History Month. We are honored to have Alyssa Grikscheit. I think did I say that right? I hope I did.
Grikscheit, close enough.
Grikscheit. Sorry about that. We were honored to have her here with us. She's a partner at Sidley Austin. Actually joined our Women in Law webinar or our in-person seminar that we did at Latham last fall. We appreciate having you back. For those that didn't get a chance to see sessions 1 and 2, I'm going to drop the link into the chat. They were recorded, and then you guys are able to watch the recordings of our sessions that we did earlier this month. For those that don't know, my name is Phil Flora. I'm Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Leopard Solution, and honored to have CEO and founder Laura Leopard here with us today to do the Q&A with Alyssa. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Laura, to take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. We just talked about the in-person event that we had at Latham. And one of the main topics in that event was business development, because we know how important that is, and that women might have a few different or a few extra struggles in that area. Business development is so important if you want to be a successful attorney. And even if you leave the law, this is a talent that you could take anywhere and use it to make yourself more successful. But we're here to talk about helping you become successful in the law and how to do business development. Why it's so important, ideas of how you can increase business development on your side so you can look toward a promotion. But as we just discussed, even after you make equity partner, you still got to do business development. So it's going to be a real cornerstone of your practice. So we'll take advantage of just getting started right off the bat. And I'm going to ask Alyssa, if you could share some of the key business development strategies that have been really instrumental in your success at a partner at Sidley Austin, what approaches have you found to be particularly effective in client acquisition?
I would say the first approach is just to do good work and don't be afraid to ask for more work after you've done that good work. That's the best time to ask is right after you've finished a project. When I was younger, I would invite clients out to lunch after a deal, and I would have a great lunch and be very friendly, and we would have a good time. But I never felt comfortable saying, how else can we help you? What else do you need? Things like that aren't even that direct in terms of saying, send me a new deal. Or even tee things up for a, when can we meet again type of conversation. And over time, I've realized that that's very important. It's very important to turn those meetings into dialogues. And now I'm upfront. I say I enjoy working with them. I say I'd love to do more work with them. There's no reason to hide that. I think women in particular can be very shy about being direct, about wanting work. So I think that is one. But it really, some of the foundation is doing good work in the first place and realizing that it's actually easier to develop business from existing relationships and existing clients. And then I would say the second approach is really to find settings where existing clients can tell potential clients how great you are, where they can just spontaneously say, I work with Alyssa, you should too. and that has been fantastic, right? They are selling you, and they're selling you based on work you've already done. And the other client realizes that they don't have any skin in the game. It's genuine. It's not you having to sort of put yourself out there. So I find industry association groups and other settings where I can increase the chances that will happen, where my existing clients will be meeting potential clients. And that really goes for an authentic discovery between them about the relationships, where it's less about me presenting an RFP and a formal pitch and more about building relationships.
Yeah, that's great. So it's sort of a referral system by using your existing clients. And I love, that asking for more work that circles back to the second webinar where we said, you really don't get much in life that you don't ask for. You have to be able to ask, ask for more work, ask for a promotion, ask for, to be assigned something at your firm. So speaking up is something that's really important for women. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to do that. So now building and sustaining those strong client relationships, we know is essential. We just discussed that. So what are some practical tips for nurturing and managing those relationships over the long term? So to really sort of bake in that client satisfaction and loyalty.
I would say the first thing is just to recognize that client service is paramount. It's so hard to develop business. I mean, this session is on developing business and not keeping business, but it's very easy. There's lots of lawyers in all of our markets where we practice, which are chasing the same relationships. And therefore, you really have to be thoughtful about getting good client service underway. So that's number one. Don't take your clients for granted. Understand that this is that this is fundamental. The second thing is to cross-sell early on. Even if clients don't take you up on that, they want to know that there's additional resources available. They may not need them now. They may need them in 6 months or a year, but understanding the full capabilities that you can offer to them, even if it's, indirectly through others at your organization. We'll talk probably later about collaboration. That's, I think, very important as well. And then be authentic. Everybody has a different style. I really enjoyed, as a young lawyer, learning from different styles, seeing what worked for different people. And some of those styles that were effective were clearly not my style. And so, some of them I didn't even try as potential styles, but it was a big learning experience to sort of watch senior lawyers in action, developing business, interacting with clients, and say, okay, what's going to work for me? We've done client events. It used to be when I was a junior lawyer, and I'm dating myself, that the only client development events were sporting events. Take them to a Rangers game, etc. And that's what people do, and that's fun. And I do that still with the appropriate clients. But we've had client events at a handbag showroom, at a photography show. Those may attract a different spectrum of clients who maybe aren't hockey fans. So I think figuring out what settings you like to operate in, what settings your clients want to be in, is going to make you more effective at that type of networking.
Well, that's great. So just because the boys are all going out golfing doesn't mean that, women can golf too, but there might be other events that they can leverage. Now, this is just a little follow up on that about what are the factors that you see when you think clients might be at risk? So just to sort of push out that client relationship nurturing and client service. Are there key factors that you look at to say, oh, I should reach back out to that client, or I should, if they don't return your emails or phone calls within a period of time? Is that a red flag?
Then it's really too late, I think, if they're not returning your phone calls. It's more about understanding the competition. Who is chasing those other clients? What other law firms are they working with, and do they have your same capabilities? When was the last time you heard from the client? When was the last time you called the client for a reason that wasn't just because they called you? So I think just being self-aware, that falls back into the don't take them for granted category. I think that's really going to help things along. And also focusing, frankly, sometimes on your biggest relationships. When was the last time you checked in with the client who you work with the most? And maybe you're so focused on the most urgent thing or the newest thing that you haven't checked in with that client. Mm-hmm. So part of it is just being honest with yourself and circling back with yourself and realizing that this is part of your job, and making sure you're attending to it and not just doing crisis management for projects that come in the door.
Right. That's great. Good advice. So let's just look at it from a woman perspective. What are the unique challenges that women face in law firm business development, and how can these challenges be addressed effectively?
So some of it is just ensuring you have access to these relationships, right? Some of what I've discussed already is how do you build on the clients you have. But if you're someone sitting there saying, wait a minute, I don't have any relationships yet, you need access, right? So and sometimes, you know, anecdotally, that can be harder for women than men. You know, you may be taking leaves more often, or just not be in the room where it happens for whatever reason. And so therefore you're not developing those early relationships. So I would say you just have to really be authentic. You have to develop relationships with the junior people your age, your level, at clients. Those people will grow up and be more important someday and scatter to different places. So don't be afraid to build those relationships early on. If you're the Christmas card type of person, send a Christmas card. And don't be afraid to be all business. Some phone calls really have to be. They're a half an hour long. You have an agenda. You need to solve something. The half an hour will expire. If you're talking fluffy things, then that may be not appreciated. But there's many other conversations that are one-on-one where you should talk about your kids, your dog, build bridges. Maybe they have kids and a dog. And to know you personally, and this is easier in person. This is why I love to have in-person meetings as well as not just constant Zooms and phone calls, which have a deadline and then someone's right on another one right when it ends. But really, you know, finding those little micro windows to get to know people as people, kind of helps you build those connections that will be useful later on in your career. I also think you can use being a woman to your advantage sometimes. I have a partner who used to tease me that a particular conference that was about 700 people, I would always show up in a red dress. And I knew that it was 80% men, 20% women. So at a maximum, 20% of the people would be wearing a red dress, if all the women dressed alike. And then therefore I could just tell my clients, you know, I'm wearing a red dress tomorrow. And they would find me so fast. And he would be searching the room for hours between sessions, trying to find his 5 clients. And he would say, oh, you know, you've got that red dress going for you. So, you know, sometimes women are just like, it's a burden, it's a barrier, but it can be an advantage in situations like that where, you know, you can use your own personal style or cues potentially more to your advantage, you know, by being different than some of the rest.
That's great. That's great. And also just important to note, I'm going to say it one more time just to drive it home, is to make those relationships with those people, those associates at your own law firm, because they will go other places and you might be able to leverage that. We know all about that. So that's good. That's good.
They will go to clients. They may go to Leopard. Who knows where they'll end up, and they'll still be friends if you've had a pizza with them at midnight. Yeah.
That's exactly right. No, that's very, very, very wise. So on a firm level, how can law firms ensure their business development strategies are inclusive and that they offer equal opportunities for women? What can the firms do?
I would say recognize that being inclusive is good business, and not just for the women involved. That, you know, clients want to see a group of people with somebody they can relate to. And if you walk into a room with a set of 5 people who are different backgrounds, different expertises, there's much more chance of you connecting with somebody in that room. This assumes that this is a fairly new relationship. If it's an existing relationship, you know, maybe they just want to see Bob. But if you're pitching something new to a new client, and you don't know exactly who these people are who are showing up, your chances are much better if you bring an array of people. And I know a GC who once told me that she arranged for a pitch and 5 guys showed up of exactly the same age and exactly the same expertise. And she asked them, she said, clearly all 5 of you will not be working on this project. You're not even a deal team. You all have overlapping expertise. It's great expertise, but where's the person that's working for you? Where's the tax guy? And meanwhile, this was a team in-house of all diverse people and women. And they sent, you know, 5 50-year-old white men. So it was a little tone deaf. And she said, we thought if they can't if they can't be creative in the pitch, we worry about them being creative once they have the business. And the other teams that came in were, you know, we're more creative, we're more diverse, and that was a factor for them. So I think it's a factor for many clients. Some clients actually have, you know, specific goals and metrics, and they, you know, they have a whole math around it. But even if the client doesn't have, you know, those specific expectations, I think firms need to recognize that they're just going to have better results if they send in, you know, a broader type of team. And women is just one factor in that. Then I think the other part is monitoring. If you're in firm administration, then, which is not the target of the audience of this presentation, but if you are, you know, monitor what's going on and figure out who doesn't get everything that I already said. Because if they're not getting that and they're not sending in these diverse teams, it's going to reflect on the whole institution that you are tone deaf, and that may affect whether you get the phone call for the next project. So it's incumbent on them to do some sort of monitoring of what teams are coming out, which teams are being successful, recognizing those successes internally, and creating a culture of access to clients that isn't just from the oldest, most experienced, most similar partners.
That's right. And in that example, they were pitching to a woman GC, so that was a big mistake. Yeah.
A woman GC with 2 women deputy GCs, you know, all of whom were either Hispanic, Asian American, or African American, and so there was also other, you know, diversity angles there too that they were not taking advantage of. They clearly had other people they could have sent to connect on any one of those levels, even if they didn't send a woman. And so that's an egregious example of somebody who really wasn't getting it when they were formulating their deal team.
Absolutely. Okay, we touched on this just a little bit, but let's talk about networking for a minute. So networking for women in the legal business development area might look very different than for men. So what strategies can women use to overcome any barriers that they might face in networking?
So some women network very effectively with other women, and their client base is women GCs. If you're one of those, then definitely seek out organizations that help you build those bridges. For whatever reason, my client base has been 90% male, 10% female. I don't necessarily have that specific knack for, you know, working with women in a way that's better than networking with men. But many women are super effective at building those bridges, and they really find that going into women's events and so forth is really a very client-rich environment, because that's just, they have a talent for that type of networking. So that really comes back to the point of, like, figure out what networks work for you. And you know, if it's not working, if you're not one of those women that should only be networking with women, then pick other settings. If you're somebody who networks really effectively in bar association groups, go for that. Or if you find that just, you know, mind-boggling and just talking to more lawyers and not clients, then say, this isn't working for me either. It's too diffuse. I'm making my name known among other lawyers, but I want to go where the clients are, and go to industry association groups or other types of settings. Because I do think that people have very different personal ways in which they build relationships. So and you know, that is really critical to be self-aware. And when you're comfortable, that, you know, others can sense that. And when you're happy and you're enjoying the networking, you're going to develop a different kind of relationship than if it's forced on you and you say, oh my gosh, today I have to do this for an hour and then I can go home. So pick the place, you know, this is all on top of your billable hours. So pick the things that you enjoy doing that aren't a burden, because somebody will recognize whether or not you're having a good time or not.
Absolutely. And that is the second time you have mentioned being self-aware. So being self-aware on multiple levels is very important. Now, part of business development is or involves, understanding and then also addressing your client needs. And we know that here too. That's what we do. We try to address our client needs. So how do you stay attuned to the evolving needs of your clients? And how can attorneys ensure they're providing services that really meet their expectations? Sometimes you have to limit their expectations or, put a boundary around them. And do you use any tools or data that helps you build that strategy?
I don't know of any specific tools. It's more instinctual in my case. So if you find any tools, send me an email. I used to market so broadly because I was trying to build my practice that I didn't really have time to develop the relationships once I had close relationships. And so now I try to spend as much time cultivating existing relationships as I do pursuing new ones, realizing, they used to have that old saying, make new friends and keep the old, one is silver and the other's gold. You really have to balance that attention that you pay to the existing clients and say, are there other things that we can do for those clients? As I mentioned earlier, it can be easier to market to existing clients. They know your work, they know your firm.
Yeah.
What else do they need? What is not getting done? What areas maybe between the cracks? Maybe they use one law firm for litigation, one for transactional. Well, what about regulatory? What about some new law that's been passed? Do they know about it? So some of that is, if you give people free advice in terms of, here's a new law, this may be affecting your business, here's a conference we're throwing for CEOs, would love you to come. That is something that is a counterweight to them calling you and paying to talk to you. So I think that is always a good idea to keep those relationships fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And then, do chase the new business. Keep yourself, honest. How do you, how should you be pitching your expertise? How can you be refreshing your client relationships? Because some of your clients will get sold. The person you love working with will retire. The new person will have some other friend or relationship. So you do have to keep refreshing. And this is to the point we were joking about earlier about how it never stops until you retire. That you really do have to keep that going. And so part of it is good service. It's also empowering others. If your client needs, are developing broadly, how are you going to make sure that the 3 other partners and 10 other associates working with that client are doing a good job, are being responsive? Maybe they're CCing you so that you can see if too much time is passing before they respond. Maybe it's weekly check-in calls, maybe it's back channel conversations with the client once in a while to say, are you happy? Are we doing everything we should be doing? Did this get done on time? Because when the client sees you care, they will be more forgiving in that one time that somebody doesn't see an email because they're on a chairlift and they didn't know till Monday. So I think all those things are part of the process.
Okay. In the last webinar that we did, we talked about the importance of being able to differentiate yourself between other attorneys. And we just talked about a team. They all did the same thing. They all, looked the same. They all did the same work. So in that second webinar, we talked about how great it would be for women to really cultivate a good niche for themselves. Is that something that you would agree with?
I would. I think when you're really young, you should do a broader set of things because the last thing you want is to develop a niche that goes away. So you want to have a base of expertise that allows you to pivot, because your career, I've heard someone say, is sort of like an hourglass. You should be doing a broad set of things, then developing that expertise. But then once you have an expertise, the clients will call you and ask you questions that are outside your expertise, and then you have to help them in a more broad way. So you don't want to develop that niche too early, but you also want to do that take advantage of that time where you're getting a broader base of expertise and exploring to say, what am I passionate about? I've known many women who end up in a practice area that is what their mentor or their sponsor loved to do. And that mentor or sponsor liked them and they pushed them there because they said, we'd love you to work on our stuff. And they didn't have much agency to sort of, or, decision to say, that's not my favorite work. I really want to be doing labor law over here, because they were grateful for the sponsorship and the mentorship, and they sort of ended up maybe doing something less interesting to them. But we work long hours, and if you're going to end up in a niche that's not what you want to be doing long term, you may not last as long in your career. You may decide, that this isn't for you, when it could have been for you if you had sort of taken a little more control over your career path. So I would say it's a mix. You should kind of have that exploration phase, and then yes, participate in that move toward an expertise where you're not just like all the other hundreds of lawyers in town, and somebody will call you both internally and externally because you know something in particular that is helpful to your internal teams and to your external clients.
Yeah, that's great. Now, in our second webinar, we also talked a little bit about, when do you start business development? As soon as possible, right? Like you started on day one. But I think there's probably a lot of, young women associates out there who aren't even thinking about that, at the beginning. So what sort of foundational steps do you recommend they can take to sort of kickstart those efforts so they can build a successful practice within a firm?
So I would say make sure to meet as many people as you can. As we discussed, a lot of your peers will end up in-house doing something else, and that's the easiest if you remember working together, when you were a fifth-year associate. Offer to do work for lots of people. This is no longer kind of high school where, you're a ninth grader, you can only be friends with ninth graders and the 12th graders don't want to talk to you. It's even in the hierarchical firms, you need to be building connections with people senior and junior to you to manage effectively, working together. So offer to do work for lots of people. Don't be afraid to connect with people who are more senior to you and more junior to you. And this builds your internal network, which is important for getting promoted. But also, if you are the one that leaves the firm, you'll have a broader work network that may lead to different work and personal opportunities. And realize that some of these relationships internally, somebody you work for, you may not work for long term because that's not what you end up deciding to do. But if that person has good things to say about you, that will help as you're up for promotion, et cetera. Even if the person says, I last worked with Leslie 7 years ago, but she was great, as a junior associate, if they haven't had any negative experiences since then, that's still valid. That's still internal consensus that you're doing good work. So really it's initially about being known within your organization, particularly if it's a large firm that you're navigating, and where those relationships really can lead in lots of different directions long term.
That's great. So it's good to make friends. It's good to make work friends.
Absolutely. Work friends are underrated.
That's right. Well, we've sort of approached the end of the half hour. Is there anything you'd like to throw in at the end, or anything you'd like to add?
I would say the only other thing I specifically tell women is, find the right lifetime partner, because it really matters. That's a decision that if you're with somebody who is supportive, who when things get tough at work can help on the personal side, and vice versa, a modern partner. We doesn't say you have to have a partner, but if you're going to pick one, pick one that's going to help be supportive to you, and you can support them back. I also like to say, be stubborn and don't give up. There's a time, I think, in the middle of most women's careers when, they feel this crush of, they were perfect at the details, and now they have to be understanding the big picture items, the micro, the macro at the same time, and it feels overwhelming. And maybe they have a life event going on at the same time, and they just say, this is unsustainable. Maybe it's unsustainable today, but if you work through it, you know, in 6 months, it'll work out okay, and you'll be more senior and you can delegate more. So I think a lot of women who succeed in this profession have a little bit of stubbornness to them. And then finally, something I told a woman I met with last week who had just had a young child, and she was, you know, all of her time was work and her child. As I said, okay, 5 hours a week for yourself. You know, have a hobby or do something, go have lunch with a friend. I was like, treat yourself as a client so that you stay a three-dimensional human being. Clients, even if it's just for the clients want to interact with real people, not avatars. So have something you can talk about, you know, whether it's, you know, every year I watch the US Open or something, even if it's a small time commitment, make sure you're not sort of crowding out everything on the personal side, even though it's hard to think about that when you may be juggling the demands of work and a family, you know, at a particular life stage. So those would be my parting shots specifically for women.
That's great. I love that. I love that. It's the importance of being a full, well-rounded human being, right? Just take a few hours a week to accomplish.
Yes.
Thank you
At
so
least.
much. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Really,
Yeah, it was great
it.
seeing you. Thank you for having me. And I think this was a fantastic way to celebrate Women's History Month.
Yes, us too, and you're getting some lovely kudos in the
Yep.
chat there. So, thanks to everyone for joining. This video is going to be available. If you know someone that this would benefit, you know, please pass along that URL to them. Alyssa, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take
Everybody,
care.
Much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.